Hello everybody, it's Claymore here, and welcome back to the CLAYCAST. Yeah, this has been on the back burner for a while. For those of you who are new to the CLAYCAST, I attempted a couple of episodes of them 2+ years ago now, and yeah, kind of fell off doing that. To be fair, I was very deep in a lot of Escape from Tarkov grinding back then, and yeah, it was a big time back then. And I know that I said that I was going to get these CLAYCAST episodes recorded, but the holidays kind of like just zoomed in on me. I had to work some extra shifts to pay for increased costs and also get some stuff for my family. But also, Dark and Darker kind of just came upon me and swallowed me whole and spat me back out. And now I'm deeply depressed because Dark and Darker is not going to be back until February. So yes. But regardless, so the CLAYCAST. I literally talk about something I want to talk about. It could be multiple topics, one topic in particular. It's just stuff I'm interested in. There's no script. I just kind of say what's on my mind. It's unfiltered. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So, with the intro more or less out the way and done with, I figured I'd start off with a little explanation as to why I have gone a little bit quiet on the content side of things, at least for the YouTube and streaming part. There's a few reasons for this. The primary reason right now is that I'm just kind of taking things a bit easy. I'm just trying to game and have a good time with my games, whilst also waiting for certain things to come out or update. I won't bore you too much with the details, but long story short, I learned a while ago that pushing myself into burnout isn't great for the mental, and it can end up kind of like bursting at the seams in not a good way. So I promised myself that the next time I felt that kind of feeling coming up on me again, I would pump my foot on the brake, take it a bit easy, focus on things that I actually want to do and need to do. And yeah. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that there was a lot of personal introspection, with Christmas and New Year's coming up, a little bit of reflection on how the year's gone. I'm pretty happy with how the year's gone. With a massive jump from one genre to another genre in terms of my content, and it working out pretty well for the most part. A lot of growth. But I was really thinking about what I wanted to get set up for New Year. Now, I know, it's the usual stuff, New Year, new me, etc., but, I think New Year, new me really hit hard as we came up on Christmas to me. And so I've been back at the gym, and I feel way more committed and resolved to going to the gym than before. Before, I kind of went just to kind of, I don't know, I felt obliged to go there to shut some certain people up, but now it's a different story. Now it's a lot more of a personal drive kind of thing. Yeah, so that's another reason why. But I think the biggest reason, is because there's not really a lot happening right now in terms of the games I want to make content for. And as a lot of you know, if you need to look back at the last 8 months of my content on streaming and on YouTube, that's been the Psycho Frontier. So a little bit of history with the Psycho Frontier with me is that I got started in the first closed beta. Never played the old game, the Battle Royale version. I think I played about 60 or so percent, 70% in a stretch of the first closed beta. I liked it. Didn't quite grip me though. The second closed beta came around though, and that really, really grabbed me. Like I was hopelessly addicted, and I was extremely upset when it went down. And then, whilst the devs were working on the full release, it was a pit of basically filler content in terms of I was trying to survive on DayZ, and when I play DayZ, I'm desperate. So yeah, we went through the entirety of Season 1, and I don't think we really stopped playing Season 1 as a whole. It was a good 3 months. The cheaters were an issue, but for the most part, it was still a good 3 months. And then Season 2 came upon us with, the new map, and the cheater problem more or less being completely, if not mostly, I think that's fair, mostly resolved. There are still cheaters in the game, but with the trusted v untrusted lobbies, with the untrusted trusted counts, and everything else, all the measures they've taken, cheaters are basically virtually not a problem in the cycle anymore. I've never seen a dev team of any game completely and utterly, nearly eradicate a cheating problem in their game. So, that was really, truly impressive. But with Season 2, with the cheater situation resolved, I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like the cheatest problem in Season 1 took away from a lot of the existing problems in the game. And, these could be weapon balancing, it could be economy balancing, it could be all sorts of things. And, I think that Season 2's been a very big kind of learning curve for Jaeger, for the devs. I think that the season, for the most part, has been good. It's better than Season 1, that's for sure. But like I said, there was a lot of problems, fundamental issues in the game that needed addressing. And I think that's kind of what contributed to a lot of the players falling off the game. I feel that's why the player base has mostly deteriorated. And this season has been longer. Now, we were said and told that the seasons would be around 3 to 4 months. The season, I think, is going to be cracking on for 5-6 months. And, when people complete the game fairly quickly, there's not a lot for them to do. They're going to leave naturally, wait for things to come out. Now, with that being said, I am a Cycle partner, well, former partner. Now I'm part of the Fortuners Favored, which is essentially the new partner role. And I have, even if I've stopped playing the game right now, I'm still very much in contact with the devs, with the Cycle Discord. I'm offering feedback. I'm testing things for them as well. And, I'm still very much involved in the game. I've not given up on it, nothing of the sort. Mostly because the devs, the community managers, everything else, they make an effort, they make an effort to communicate with us, and they've taken a lot of our feedback into account. They've listened to us very, very closely. And we've been seeing a lot of really, really positive changes and signs, which is why I think I'm still, to this point, committed to the Cycle Frontier. That's why I think I still want to support the game. And, coming from a really rich background of Escape from Tarkov, I think we got that from Battlestate Games, but we got it at a much slower pace, much, much slower. And it's going to be for one reason or another. But all in all, I think that Jaeger are worth supporting. I think that, if you are playing the game yourself, I think it's worth supporting them with Warren purchases and stuff like that. That's just my opinion. Right now, Cycle. Not playing it right now. I've dipped on it occasionally just to play a few games, just to kind of see how things are. And for the most part, the game is in a really, really great state. The matchmaking feels much, much better. I feel like I'm playing against more people on my similar level rather than the absolute best players in the game. I'm good at the game, but I'm not that good at the game. There are some absolute just champions playing this game. And, fair play to their skills. I think that the Forge with Tharis Island, I think that's been, for the most part, pretty well balanced out now. It needs some more work, but it's looking pretty good. The weapon balance, in terms of meta and stuff like that, is probably in the best place it's ever been. I think the only thing that really need to look at would probably be the Basilisk. And the devs have their eye on the Basilisk, I know that for a fact. And maybe some of the endgame armors, exotic legendary armors needing to be a bit tougher, and some legendary guns need buffing or outright fixing. The Comrade is just busted to use right now. These are all things really easily done and achieved. Obviously, the economy things are a big thing, but we reacted to a dev blog or a dev update not long ago. It was one of my previous videos, which you guys watched. Regarding updates to Season 3, and we got a lot of really great news. We got news on the Howler boss coming in Season 3, the new mini-boss. We got news on really big economy changes, where we're going to have way more things to sink our money into, which I really like. We've got a new hub coming, a completely revamped hub, which is, on the cosmetic side of things, but hopefully there's more utilities and it feels a bit more of an alive world, which would be nice. And we're getting, loadout presets. These are really, really good changes. And I think we've been teased about new weapons, but I don't know if that's for sure. That's just hearsay. There's a lot to look forward to in Season 3. There's a lot to look forward to, and I absolutely, truthfully cannot wait to play it. It's just biding my time. It's just biding my time. That's all it is. My plans are to come back to Cycle to Season... come back to Cycle after the New Year's. We break into New Year's. There's a few reasons for that. I am making a couple of video series where I want to get involved to, and there's one little personal project I want to work on, which I might try to work with the devs for. But for the most part, there are reasons for me to come back to the Cycle past New Year's. And, you take a long enough break from anything, you don't mind going back to something, even if it's not a lot to do right now, So, that's more or less my place of Cycle currently. As a Fortuner's Favored, I'm not obliged to tell you any of this. I'm not here to, tell you this game is amazing and incredible and you should play it right now. I think you should play it right now. But, the game has a lot of work to be done. The devs are doing that work or have done that work. And all we need to do is wait and bide our time for season 3, which I know a lot of us are doing right now. Still a great game, still a great company. Now, I briefly mentioned my history with Escape from Tarkov. I briefly mentioned it. And we're literally like days away now from patch 0.13 coming out, 0.13, which is going to be the patch we finally get straight to Tarkov. This thing we've been teased about for years, literal years. We've seen trailers for it, teasers for it, concept art of it, screenshots of it, all sorts. And I really, really thought that the announcement of the wipe, the announcement of Streets, I really thought this was enough to kind of rekindle my fire for the game, you know? And I think I was genuinely surprised when I watched that trailer, the announcement trailer for patch 0.13, and I just didn't feel anything. It looked cool, but I just didn't feel that usual fire that I have when Tarkov wipes. I mean, I didn't feel that last patch. I didn't feel this patch either. I was surprised at myself, genuinely, because I told myself I'd come back to Streets for sure, but here I am after watching that trailer and nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing there. Like I said, I'm unpleasantly is I think is more appropriate. Unpleasantly surprised because, you know, that Tarkov would have been a good game to come back to until Cycle Season 3 came out. But now I'm sitting here not so sure if I want to. It's weird. I probably, admittedly, will come back regardless for the wipe. And I think the reason why I would is not so much because I'm genuinely excited to play the game. I think it's more sentimental reasons, you know. I'm not playing the game, and I haven't played the game for, I would say, nearly a year now. I think about 10 months, because I've not played the entirety of this current patch run right now. And I stopped playing a few months at the back end of the previous wipe when Lighthouse came out. So, yeah, about 10 or so months. But regardless of all of that, you know, I'm here because of Tarkov. I'm here because of the friends I've made. I'm here because of the viewers that came in from Tarkov and stuck with me in the literal first few months of my channel going live on Twitch. I'm here because of everybody that I've just mentioned. You know, and it's not like I feel like I owe it to them to play the game. I just feel like that's enough of a reason to pull me back to the game, at least until Cycle Season 3 comes out. I will admit that making content for Tarkov, for me right now, is pretty tough. I really enjoyed making content for Cycle because it was something new, and I felt like I had a grasp on something new. And truth be told, you know, my YouTube channel has been doing very, very well. I've been very proud of what I've done with Cycle so far. I've been very, very proud of it. But, you know, it's a new game. There's opportunities to get involved as a content creator. Whereas with Tarkov, I feel like I missed the bus a little bit there. So if I were to come back to Tarkov, it would be purely, not so much narrative, just, you know, lighthearted narration over my gameplay. You know, no guys, nothing like that. Just to kind of like push myself maybe a bit more regarding editing and see if I can try out some new things. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So we'll see. I'm still very much on the fence about coming back to Tarkov. Still very much on the fence. But yeah, we'll see. Regardless, I owe the game a lot. I owe the community a lot. I owe my friends a lot. And I owe my friends, who are also my viewers, a lot as well, my community as well. So that will likely be enough to put me back, at least for a little bit. So yeah, TLDR, Tarkov strong maybe. Probably going to play it during the wipe, but can't guarantee I'll commit to the full wipe. So that's my opinion on Cycle. That's my current state of Tarkov. I want to talk now about another extraction game that I think I put about 80 hours in over the week and a half it was out. And that is Dark and Darker. Now, my only history with this game prior to this current playtest, or previous playtest coming out, was that I played about 3-4 hours of it, of the first playtest. At the back end of it was finishing up. And I liked it, but similar, I guess, to Cycle and the first closed beta to the second closed beta, I only really got hooked on the second playtest. And boy, did I get hooked. I was not expecting to fall hook, line, sinker, and boat for this game. Going off the initial impressions, it didn't look like anything special. Going off the gameplay, it looked very wooden. But then I actually started playing the game and my initial frustrations, I think, were mostly around the fact that I didn't really quite know what I was doing, and being a solo in Dark and Darker is rough. Now, I come from Tarkov and Cycle. Both games are tough for solos. Dark and Darker is very tough on solos. I think a large issue with that is that people started learning the spawns. And if you spawn as a 3-man, no matter what map you're playing or what map, if you're playing normal or high roller or whatever, like, your objective straight away is to spawn in and then rush to the left or right and try to deal with the other spawns there. They could be 2-mans, 3-mans as well, but yeah, if you're a solo, that's a rough time. That's a really rough time. So I got over that initial frustration. I started dedicating myself to learning the fighter role. I'm a very vanilla basic bitch when it comes to roles like that. I always at least start off initially with the melee warrior tank kind of deal, you know? And I started getting into it, and I started realizing how tough fighters were, and, you know, how strong the second wind ability is, how it worked, how many campfires I have to get back to get my second wind ability. All these little small things. And I started playing with friends who were also either trying out the game or just, you know, kind of a bit iffy about joining it. A good friend of mine, Bobby, he plays a lot of very, very big FPS shooters, sci-fi shooters, and stuff like that. And he was a bit on the fence about trying Dark and Dark originally, but I convinced him to play it. And like me, he just fell hard for the game. So, yeah. I think that Dark and Darker has incredible potential. I think that the Mordhau-esque, or I guess Mountain Blade chivalry kind of combat, you know what I mean? Like, direction-based gameplay that, you know, kind of dictates certain patterns, but also there's a lot of complexity about using these patterns against your enemy. It turned out the gameplay ended up being way more deep than I thought, and, you know, suddenly starting to learn the numbers or the damage I was doing and how many headshots I need to hit in order to either really, really mess someone up or kill them outright. You know, the layers of gameplay really shine out. And having a knowledge as well of all the other classes. If you did not do it this playtest, 100% next playtest, play all the classes. Because not only will you maybe realize that you prefer playing another class compared to the first one you played, but it also gives you a much deeper insight into the class as a whole. So when you go up against them, go against enemies who play those classes, you have a much clearer idea of what they're capable of, what you need to be careful of. So, yeah. The looting, I think, is very, very well done. Aside from those bloody bracelets, which are so hard to pick up, I think exploring and going to certain areas and, you know, picking up all these little items, jewelry bits, or, you know, smashing barrels and boxes to get, you know, gear out. You know, it's all very gratuitous, very, very gratuitous, and it feels nice doing it. And, you know, I think that an average gold outcome for me on normal mode was about 200 gold, most runs, which, you know, is pretty respectable. And that's not including any items you might sell on the trade, like the trade posts. And, oh my God, the trade posts. I think it's really great having players advertise themselves, their items and stuff to other players to get that kind of like social marketing back in again. Some of my fondest memories of making money and getting services and stuff like that in any MMORPGs, whatever, in the past, like World of Warcraft, advertising in trade chats, you know, like trying to find people who want your services, your professions, or buy the items you're selling. You know, the auction house, I think, was great for that, but you still, to a degree, felt like you need to do it in trade chat too. And I think that the trade posts were a fantastic idea by Anime Studios. And it really felt nice talking to people or being talked to regarding negotiating pricing as well, like haggling. You know, I never expected to find that so appropriate for Dark and Darker. Haggling prices, you know, like, you know, maybe you're feeling generous and you're willing to drop 50 gold on the price of your item you're selling, or maybe you bring up a good point about the item you want to buy and the trader is convinced and he drops 100 gold for it. It's I didn't realize I'd have so much fun playing it. I'm pretty sure out of the 80 hours I spent, 10 of those hours were just sat selling and buying things. It's really nice. and it's streamlined as well. For the most part, it's pretty streamlined. If you don't know, if you didn't get out of trading, essentially you would go into a trade post. If you wanted to sell a weapon, you go to a weapon trade post, armor trade post, utility, obviously. And you would advertise your item, pop a price in it, or say, offer me money. They would request a trade. You can choose to deny or accept that trade. And if you accept it, you go to a trade window. You put the item on, and then there's a text bar up the side on the left hand of your screen, and you can talk to each other there. Or if the person's fine with the price, they can literally just get into the trade window, put the gold in there, and you can accept it straight away. It's very, very quick and easy. The only issues I have with the trading system is that I think it could really benefit from two things. What I noticed is that essentially people would just go into weapon trade post 1 because it was the first one and just advertise everything there, weapons, armor, and utilities. I think there should be like a filtering system, which if you are trying to sell armor in a weapon trade post, it should tell you this is not, or it just like not let you advertise it whatsoever. Like there's like something that prevents you from linking the item, something like that. Just so each item is in its actual category, and so you don't look at weapon trade post 1 and just get a headache from just trying to see everything that's going on. Plus, going to armor trade post and actually seeing armor, for example, it's just easier in the eyes, and you know exactly what you're looking for. Another thing is, being able to keyword search. Now, it could be a certain item, it could be a certain word like arming for arming sword or ox pendant, etc. Something to help us filter out an item we are specifically looking for would be nice, whether it's a highlight option or if it literally just filters out all over advertising posts, and then it only shows up the ones you're looking for. That'd be nice too. And, one more thing. It's a small thing, not really worthy of 2.5, I would say. The 2.5 thing would be that a slightly longer time for people to post things. 8 seconds, I think, is a bit too short. I think 15, 20 seconds. And also give us a timer to let us know when we're able to post again. Just give us a timer, small thing, but it means a lot. Aside from that, trading post is absolutely amazing. And I made thousands and thousands and bought many things off there. I got my stash full of nice purples, blues, a couple of legendary pieces here and there. I didn't admittedly get round really to really farming ruby silver. I didn't see the point of it. Just because the stats weren't really guaranteed on the ruby silver pieces. You can make something as a fighter and make a ruby silver piece that's great for a cleric. You could probably make a lot of money on that and buy something else good for you, but I just figured it would be better just to make the money by getting items not to sell them anyways. And not to mention, too, the play tests in general are a bit short, so I didn't really see the point of spending the time to farm all the ruby silver. When it comes out in open beta, I'll probably be way more inclined to do that, but yeah. And also, something which I think it needs is stat rerolling. I don't know how they do it. Maybe there's another certain material you'd need, or maybe you need some more of the material ruby silver to do this, but being able to reroll traits and hopefully get the item you want, the most optimized pieces, which would be nice. Make it very costly, but something like that would be nice too. I think in terms of balancing and the certain builds people would use, there's only really one that sticks out in my mind, and that is the Mage Ignite Dagger build. Or Rapier. I don't think it's Rapier build, no, Dagger build. I've seen gameplay of it when up against mages who do that, and just being able to two-shot people with this Ignite Dagger build, or three-shot people with the right stat build as well, is pretty nuts. Especially with mages having haste and invisibility. I don't think it's... I think that's the only real thing that I think is a bit too overpowered. I think that definitely needs nerfing. If anything, Ignite should only really be, in my opinion, applied to other people's weapons. I don't think mages should benefit from it. Especially because you've got things like Zap and Magic Missile, and other things, Haste, which are like really easily regained by meditating. So I think that's the real thing for balancing I can think about. I mean, the game, in terms of graphics, I think a similar approach with this game was taken like 7 Days to Die took, where they made the graphics passable, but I think they focus way more on atmosphere and lighting to really kind of like sink you in. The lighting in this game is incredible. Some of the best lighting I've seen in a game in a while. It's fantastic, and they call it Dark and Darker. It's a dark game. You will need those torches. You need to throw them about the room. Light up the area. Make sure you're not going to be jumped by any enemies in the shadows and stuff. You know, the amount of times I've run into areas that have how the braziers or torches doused, and I throw a torch down and I see like a rogue or a ranger sitting nearby in a corner. It's very important you do that. The lighting is very important in this game, and to my knowledge, I've only had a couple of encounters where I was definitely submerged in complete darkness. I didn't have potions on my belt, nothing showing on my belt to give me a position, and then I got hit by either rangers or mages. That's only the real instance I've had of people potentially abusing gamma. If you don't know what that is, basically people will essentially bypass the brightness settings a game offers you or expects you to abide by via third-party plugins. It could be NVIDIA, it could be other programs and stuff. It's one of the things I detest the most. If a game is obviously intending an area to be dark and forces you to adapt your playstyle, that should be the intended way to navigate around that problem. I don't think that, you know, using a third-party program or anything like that to give yourself an advantage is fair. And I think that, generally speaking, you know, in an age where players as a whole think it's acceptable to get any lead in your enemy whatsoever, even if it means exploiting, getting out of bounds of the game, or reaching areas you shouldn't reach, etc., you know, I think it's abhorrent. You know, I'm all for ingenuity. I'm all for, like, how did he get up there? Oh, he can do that. That's really smart. You know, but, like, you know, I'm not for people exploiting things. I'm not for people bypassing game mechanics externally. I'm not for that. In my opinion, that's as worse as cheating, and it should be banned. But, yeah, going back to the original point, I don't really feel like there was any issues regarding the darkness that made it so it was easily bypassed by. So, devs should keep an eye on that, though, because the darkness has obviously is a big element of the game, and you know, people need to play around the darkness. So, yeah. I pretty much played every single class aside from the cleric. Rangers aren't for me. They're quite strong, but they're not for me. I'm always a melee guy. Rogues are fun to play, and I think they're the easiest class to play solo. And the ambush build that I was doing, really nice too. Just dropping people within a couple seconds of you coming out of stealth is really nice. The mages, very difficult to play solo. But play them well and cast your spells at like a good time. They can easily wipe people out if they're not careful. So mages were quite fun to play. And obviously the fighters, they're great. I love the fighters. I'm a fighter main. I would dare say I'm one of the better fighter players in this game. Not gonna lie. I would love to see my stats for normal mode. I think for high roller I didn't do enough of it because I was just kind of like vibing a bit with the game, enjoying it. But I think next playtest I really want to go hard in high roller and see my stats. But I mean, just by playing a little bit of high roller, I got top 500 in a few different genres, and considering there was damn near 80 to 90,000 people playing at one point, not bad. So overall, Dark and Darker. I think that once this game comes back out, I really want to make content for the game. I do have a lot of footage I want to work through on a, you know, like a fun little prot side video, illuminating my highlights and likes, dislikes of the game, like a general review video, but you know, more of a passing review, more of a gameplay video. Don't know when I'll get around to doing that, but we'll see. Either way, I've got some clips, good moments, memories saved from it, and yeah, I think the nice thing about it too was playing with people I've not played with in a while, either friends, content creators, or viewers. Getting people to play it and them enjoying it, playing them a lot. Yeah, Dark and Dark, I brought everything back that I think I loved about Tarkov back in the early days, and Cycle too. So the next playtest is in February. Long way away, but February is my birthday month, so you know, we'll see. Hopefully the playtest lasts a bit longer too. So yeah, so we've talked about Cycle, we've talked about Tarkov, we've talked about Dark and Darker. In terms of media, I want to discuss next. I think I really want to talk about the new Avatar movie, the Avatar: Way of Water. Now, before I do this, I will say I'm going to put on the screen right now that I am going to be talking about spoilers from the get-go. Okay, right here or up there, down there, whatever. I am going to be talking about spoilers straight away. So if you don't want to watch this segment, I'm going to make sure I timestamp this on the video. If you don't want to see any spoilers or anything about the movie, do not just ignore this segment of the video. The Avatar Way of Water, talking about it, etc. Just don't look at it. Don't watch it. You've been warned. I don't want to see any comments on this video saying, thanks for spoiling the movie for me. You've been amply warned, right? Spoilers up there, whatever. Let's get started anyways. So, Avatar Way of Water, the second Avatar movie. I went to go watch the last Avatar movie whenever the bloody hell it came out, like 10 years ago, something like that now, 10, 11 years ago. Now, bear in mind I was about 18, 17 back then, so a lot less mature than I am now, which isn't a huge leap. But my opinion on the first Avatar movie was, I put it at a 10 out of 10. I went back to watch it 3 times in the cinema, for God's sake. And back when that was when the cinema prices were quite high, as they're much better now. I absolutely adored the movie. You know, love the story, love the characters, love the visuals. I mean, back then, much like this current movie now, back then, that was the peak of tech in any movie. The CGI, the motion capture, the creature design, the world design, the noise, the soundtrack, everything was as possibly as high quality as it could have been. And that was back then. And going back to watch the first movie before I watched the second movie recently, it still very much holds up to this day. Still very much holds up. And yeah, so needless to say, I really liked the first movie. I completely and utterly blanked out and left social media for anything to do with the second Avatar movie. I wanted to go into this movie clean. Because there's too many friggin' people on TikTok, on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, that post these fucking spoilers, and it was made in. So I completely isolated myself from social media. The only thing I looked at, admittedly, I did ruin this a bit by myself, was the rating in IMDb. It's usually my first point of contact when it comes to movie rating, because the majority of the time I look at IMDb rather than I do Rotten Tomatoes or IGN, anything like that, and I agree much more with the IMDb scores. So I went into the Avatar Way of Water my first time. I went alone because no one wanted to sit for 3 hours like I did. And I pretty much felt the same things I felt from 10 years ago. I was enraptured throughout nearly the entire movie. A 3-hour movie felt more like a 2-hour movie, aside from the fact that I did have to go to the bathroom twice. I was aggressively sipping on my Coke, but to be fair, so that's on me. I was enraptured about everything. Once again, the visuals, I don't know how they did it, but there's not a better looking movie or game cinematic, and there are some good game cinematics out there, Blizzard quality, you know, like better than that. The visuals were incredible. Seeing returning characters come back and they pick up their roles seamlessly, effortlessly. New characters coming in, and you immediately invested in them. You're immediately invested in them because you like the old characters so much. You're invested in these characters because, you know, they're also done very well. And the general story is that we are after a fair few years after the first Avatar movie. And, you know, it looks like everything's peaceful. You know, Jake Sully, who was the main character in the first movie, he was the one who obviously went native, essentially, and he had himself a family with Natiri. And they spend a very, very few blissful years raising their kids, you know, and then the Sky people, humans, we come back to the planet and we completely and utterly ruin everything, as is good fashion from us. And we generally see a big shift from this peaceful, blissful child raising episode now into a hit and run raiding party vibe that we've gotten, where Jake Sully and his warband people, the Ametikaya, I think they're called, are constantly attacking things like trains, I'm assuming supply runs and stuff like that, to basically hinder the humans' operations on Pandora as much as they can. And we pick up more or less around this point where they are doing that, but then Colonel, whatever his rank was, Quaritch, the main bad guy from the old movie, he comes back in Avatar form. Now, this was a surprise to me. I didn't think they would bring back the old villains. And I know some people had issues with this, but I thought, as a whole, it made sense that the higher ups in the humans would want Quaritch and these other soldiers under his command, the few that they were, to back themselves up as avatars. Because, at the end of the day, these are not just people who just flew to Pandora a few weeks ago and that was that. These are soldiers, these are Marines who have spent quite a long time on the planet. They have a much more deeper insight in how dangerous the planet is. And not to mention the training as well. It makes sense to take these valuable resources rather than bringing in fresh recruits and conscripts or whatever they do, and just kind of throwing them in the avatar bodies and expecting them to do well. They didn't do it with Jake Sully. Jake Sully was a trained Marine. It's one of the reasons they put him in an avatar body. So I think it made perfect sense. I think people had a bit of an issue because it felt like a cheap way to bring him back, but it makes perfect sense to me. Why potentially waste a valuable resource in terms of military assets? Why waste it? Especially for the reason they're given as to why they came back, technically speaking, in their avatar forms. Technically, they're not going to come back. They are clones up to a certain point before their deaths. But yeah, so long story short, they come back and they're tasked with infiltrating the Ometakaya and killing Jake. And they managed to more or less nearly achieve this within a few days, it seems like, of them landing on Pandora. So it's a shock and awe operation. They captured a lot of Jake Sully's kids, the majority of his kids, and after Jake and Neytiri try to rescue them, they managed to rescue them all, aside from Spider, who is the human who was too young at the time of the first movie to go back with the humans to Earth, because back then he was too young to go into cryopod. I guess it's a thing. You can't put babies in cryo. And he essentially was raised and adopted by the Na'vi people, and he is, for the most part, an honorary Na'vi. He was captured, taken back. There's a whole story with him and his dad, who is Quaritch, but obviously Quaritch is in his avatar form. There's a whole arc with him trying to, a little bit of bonding going on there, but not really. They are still very, very polar opposites to each other. But when this happened to Jake, when his kids, literally under knife point, I think it kind of set something off, and I think that another issue some people seem to have with this movie is the complete shift in character for Jake. He goes from this war chief, essentially, to someone who just wants to protect his kids by any means necessary, and that means abandoning the fight. You have to remember one thing from the first movie, and this is something I realized when I rewatched the first movie. Jake is a guy who has nothing to fight for. Even technically going to Pandora on his first tour, in his avatar body, technically he still didn't find anything to fight for. He connected with the Na'vi, he connected with Pandora and Neytiri, but, the real connection I don't think started until he had his first kids. And, as a father, when you essentially get quite, I would argue, comfortable knowing that you protect your kids, they're not in danger, because the humans couldn't reach their stronghold, right, in the Hallelujah Mountains. They couldn't reach them, equipment doesn't work up there, and like the first movie where felt like the entire forest, jungles of Pandora completely swarmed over the humans, a similar thing happens if they spend too long up there. So they can't get to the base. So I think that's the reason why Jake got quite comfortable knowing that his family was pretty much safe there. But then Quaritch and the other avatars, the Marine avatars, show up and they basically bypass all that. They're able to because the planet doesn't detect them, I guess. And suddenly everything he's fighting for is in grave danger. He knows Quaritch. He knows how relentless and brutal he can be, and he can't imagine being in the world without his kids. So he takes his kids and Neytiri is very upset about it all. They all are, and they, after giving the mantle of war chief or chief, Ometakan, I think it is. I don't know, but after giving that role to someone else, they fly off into the ocean and seek refuge with the Metkaina, which are the sea people, basically. And, a good part of this movie, I would say a good third of this movie, is dedicated to them adjusting, learning those sea people's ways, and, trying to pull their weight, basically. And there are some conflicts. There is some conflict between them, because technically Jake is he's tank born, he's not a true Na'vi. Their kids are half breeds. They're constantly referred to in the movie hybrids. You know, they're Navi and human genes, and there's a lot of conflict there, and that conflict comes up a bit in certain instances here and there. But I feel like they spent less time focusing on the kids learning things, and they spent time on Jake learning things in the movie, which I think is good. Because a lot of the people who came to watch the second Avatar movie are from the first movie. They don't want to watch a full, training arc all over again. So I think they spent a good amount of time on the kids of Jake, and not so much Neytiri, admittedly, but them all essentially adjusting and learning how the sea people operate. And this is more or less leading up to a couple of different things. The first thing is essentially the Pandoran whales, the Tulkun. Take our whales, make them way more intelligent and way more emotional, like genius level, basically. They essentially they're in their own right, a complete separate race and culture on Pandora. But the sea people are very close. Even so, going so far as to relate themselves to them, like they call them sisters and brothers and stuff. And we run into one of Jake's kids who essentially befriend and is rescued by a rogue Tulkun, who is very infamous amongst both the sea people and the other Tulkuns for being a rogue. And the story is explained later. Long story short, the Tulkun don't like violence. They don't like inflicting violence. Blood begets blood, basically, and they don't like that because they had a very long history of fighting each other. And this obviously has bred a lot of conflict with this current rogue Tulkun, who does actually save them at one point because he's violent. So, sometimes a little bit of violence is necessary. At least in the context of, your planet being taken over by foreign invaders. And then we also get a pretty brutal segment on how the humans hunt these Tulkun. It's basically like a run by run whaling PSA. And they don't pull any punches. It's brutal. You see, blood pooling the water. You see the Tulkun they hunt die pretty tragically, and the calf, is rubbing up against it and crying and stuff like that. And they harvest this amrita, it's called. It's like a brain fluid which stops human aging. That's the reason why they hunt them, and it pays for a lot of the operations on Pandora. It's a pretty brutal scene. Like, it tugged at my heartstrings, that's for sure. So we've got this whole Tulkun arc, and then we've got Kiri, who isn't one of Jake's kids. She's adopted, technically, but she was born of Grace's, who is the lead scientist lady, Sigourney Weaver's character. She was born of her avatar, which, as we know from the first movie, is like essentially an empty shell. There's no one to operate it. Grace died from wounds, even though they tried to transfer her into the avatar like they did with Jake, but she couldn't survive it. But she was born from the avatar Kiri. So she doesn't have a father, as far as we know. At least it's like a miracle birth. And Kiri, throughout the entire movie, is shown to have this very, very strong connection to everything around her. The wildlife, the vegetation, everything. And there are points in the movies where she is able to directly control the fauna to either help or attack, etc. And there's a little bit of a scene where she tries connecting to one of the spirit trees, the main thing they connect to essentially communicate with their ancestors. And she has a seizure because she has such a strong connection, I guess, that it overloads her body and neural system. I don't know. And there's a bit of drama around that. But that's a pretty big theme to play with Kiri, because she's essentially, in all respects, the Jesus character. But we'll see what role she plays later. But yeah, so a lot of these different themes playing. And then eventually at one point, Quaritch finds out, because Kiri had the seizure, and obviously the sea people, they don't really have, at least initially, the means to try and wake her up. So they call their friends, the humans, the humans who were allowed to stay, at least, and worked with the Na'vi. They called them, and because they called them and they flew there in a gunship, Quaritch was able to get a ping on them. And this begins the entire arc of Quaritch trying to go village to village in the Sea Peoples kind of area, try to flush them out. And this essentially does force them out into the open. there is a very big dramatic fight, and unfortunately, one of Jake's and Neytiri's kids die. The oldest son dies. Dies rescuing and protecting the other brother and Spider, who is the human adopted by the Na'vi. Very sad. Zoe Saldana did an incredible job portraying an angry, grieving mother. Jake Sully did well as well. Sam Worthington playing the silent, sad dad. And then there's, we go over to the ship where the remaining kids are being held hostage, and we have this big fight, and it's good. Really pops off. Seeing Neytiri go berserker rage basically is pretty cool, and Jake is also kicking ass as well. And then the final confrontation starts between Jake and Quaritch's avatar, and they fight. Jake barely wins, and Quaritch is about to die, to drown to death, but then Spider rescues him. And this is probably going to be a conflicting act in the third movie to come. So, all in all, I think the movie is fantastic. There's only one real issue I had with the movie, and that was during the main battle scene at the end, where there's obviously a big fight happening between the sea people and the humans, but then it seems like at one point the sea people kind of just like disappear. They just vanish, like they don't fight anymore. They've all just gone away. I don't understand the reason for that. That's the one thing I couldn't suss out. Maybe they were fighting the background and just were kind of like separated off from the rest of Jake's family by the fire. That kind of like happened, but it was hard to really kind of explain that one away. But I don't think it did the movie any injustice. I think it worked in its favor for the most part. So yeah, I would genuinely give the movie a 9 out of 10. Just for everything alone. And I know one of the main criticisms about this movie and the old movie by a lot of people is that the story. Now, the story is not complex, it's not complicated, there are no surprise themes, nothing. And for the most part, I do agree with that. I do agree that the story, for the most part, is pretty simple. It's not complicated to understand, to keep up with. But there are stories that are done that are simple, but that can be executed in a really, really great way, as long as like everything else is good. The visuals are excellent. The audio is excellent. The soundtrack is excellent. The voice acting, the expressions on the characters, the creature designs, the world design, everything is done to an absolute pinnacle of standard that it does nothing but take that basic story and lift it up. And I think this is where James Cameron's formula for the Avatar movies really works, because he understands that this isn't just a basic storytelling movie. He's trying to build a world, and he's trying to suck you into that world. And it works. It works incredibly. And I don't mind a simple story. I just mind it when the simple story is done and everything else is done at a very basic level, a passable level. That's not the case with Avatar: Way of Water. Everything is done incredibly, and you will find yourself wanting to watch more of it by the time it ends. And the fact that it doesn't matter what movie it is, it doesn't matter what genre it is, how high quality it is, if a movie, a game, anything like that leaves me wanting more at the end of the main story, the campaign, whatever, if it leaves me wanting end, that is a huge success in my book. Something I admittedly lost with the Marvel movies as of late. So, generally speaking, go and watch Avatar: The Way of Water. If you can, and if you're able to, I would very much encourage you to watch it on a high quality screen, IMAX or whatever. I just think it does the movie more justice. I did watch it twice in the cinema, and the screen quality was good, but I just felt like it would have been done better justice on a high quality screen. So, if you can, watch it on IMAX. But that's about it, really. The movie is fantastic, and I cannot wait till 2024 when the third movie comes out. And I think one of the funniest things about this as a whole is that people were, I don't know why, but it just seems like so many people were just trying desperately to hate on the movie and tell people that no one cares about the movie. Yet the movie is currently on its way to grossing 900 million worldwide in 11, 12 days? And I think the even funnier thing is as well is that at one point James Cameron said that the Pandora, the Avatar movie as a whole, the franchise as a whole, needs to gross $2 billion as it stands currently to be profitable. And people were, and I don't know why people were trying so hard to hate on this movie, because that's not what happened at all. And people were actually saying that the movie has to earn $2 billion for them to make profit. And that's just not true. You can literally go back and read what or hear what James Cameron said. And if the movie's currently proposed need to make $2 billion, and this movie's on its way to making $1 billion in the first month, yeah, I don't know. I just think that there was weird. Like, it almost felt like there was like a small group of people who just started to do a couple of hate campaigns about the game, and they got a bit of traction, admittedly, but the ratings the movie made speaks for itself, unfortunately. And people like the movie, and I like the movie. So yeah, I can't wait for the third one to come out, and the fourth, and the fifth. But that's more or less all I wanted to talk about, really. To summarize, we talked about my reasoning for the content slowing down a bit lately. We talked about my stance of Cycle, my thoughts on Tarkov, my review of Dark and Darker, and we talked about Avatar as well. I think that's a good balance all around. Yeah, so I want to try and do this every other week. I'm thinking once every week, just to kind of like give you guys something to watch on the YouTube channel, alongside Cycle videos, which will be coming soon in a new format, which I'm going to plug. Don't miss that. And yeah, apologies for getting the CLAYCAST generally recorded and done a bit later than intended. Like I said, holidays came up out of nowhere. Dark and Darker completely sucked me aside, and yeah. But I really appreciate everyone who stuck by for 51 minutes. Wow, that flew by. We are going to try and have to figure out what I want to talk about next week. But generally speaking, like I said, the CLAYCAST is going to be about stuff I want to talk about. It could be anything. Absolutely anything. It could be reacting to a video, and we discuss that and break that down. It could be streamer drama. It could be anything. It's going to be something and topics I just find I want to talk about. So, yeah, something always interesting in the CLAYCAST. With that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap up this. I don't know if I should call it episode 1, because I've got episode 1 and 2 technically done. So, I might just call it 1 in the title and put sort of. We'll see. Either way, though, guys, I appreciate you hanging out for the CLAYCAST. Hopefully, you guys found the topics and discussions pretty interesting. And hopefully, you guys agreed with my points. And if you didn't, leave a comment down below and let's talk about it. If there's one thing I love talking about, it's just discussing different opinions. I think it's enriching for everybody involved. And I think that people can come away, generally speaking, all the wiser. With that being said, guys, I will see you either on the next stream, the next YouTube video, or the next CLAYCAST. Enjoy the rest of your week if I don't see you. Good night, take care, stay safe, love you all. See you in the new year, more than likely. And peace.